Good afternoon, and welcome to First Church's first Holy Saturday concert. My name is Eleanor Kimball. I'm a member of First Congregational Church of Concord, United Church of Christ, and also a member of our Racial Justice Steering Committee. Before our concert begins today, we'd like to share with you how the idea for this special event came about. 4 years ago, inspired by the work of the anti-racism mission group of our New Hampshire UCC conference, our pastor, Emilia Halstead, proposed that our church study Black history and racism. A group of interested people met on Zoom, and we began the process. Initially, there were perhaps 16 of us, not just from First Church, but interested people from as far away as Florida. Participants suggested books, documentaries, movies, African American writers. Over a 3-year period, our numbers declined slightly, but the interest and enthusiasm did not. We read Isabel Wilkerson, Ibram Kendi, James Baldwin, Maya Angelou. We watched Ken Burns' documentary on Muhammad Ali and the movie about Billie Holiday. We learned about not only the struggles of African Americans, but also about their strengths and contributions they have made to our country in literature, art, and music. After 3 years, our study group presented our individual reactions to our studies, what we had learned, and how it had affected us. We did this one by one over several weeks at our Sunday morning worship services. At our church's annual meeting in June last year, we proposed that our congregation begin an anti-racism process with a plan to follow the guidelines recommended by the conference anti-racism group. Our members voted yes, and the initial study group became the steering committee for the process. Over the summer, the conference anti-racism group proposed a new process, so we read it over and revised our plans. One of their suggestions was that we introduce the Black Madonna to our congregation, her history and her importance to people of color and different cultures, as someone who looks like them, to whom they can relate. We also decided to include at least 2 African American spirituals in our service each Sunday, each one to be introduced with its history and sometimes its theology, or even as a secret code. Blessed by having an art historian in our group, each Sunday we have had African American art on the cover of our bulletin, with the artist's name and sometimes a bit of information about the artist or the work. In addition, beginning at the first of this year as a Lenten study, we have been viewing videos from a series entitled Covenantal Restoration, a 12-session series on faith and race produced by the work of the people. Each video viewing was followed by a brief discussion. The speakers in the video have been impressive, to say the least. One of them, when talking about Easter, said that African Americans have trouble getting to resurrection. They're caught in the fear and darkness of the period between Good Friday and Easter, that is Holy Saturday. That pronouncement touched our hearts as well as our minds. And since some members of our Jazz Sanctuary band are also members of the Anti-Racism Steering Committee, they were inspired to do something meaningful on Holy Saturday. They wanted to acknowledge the darkness and fear that has pervaded the lives of people of color from the time they were kidnapped from Africa through slavery, lynchings, and into modern-day discrimination. And they also wanted to recognize and praise the strength, the faith, hope, and even joy that has sustained and continues to to motivate African Americans. So the Jazz Sanctuary musicians and vocalists have put together this musical celebration today to recognize and remember the struggles and the strengths that continue to move people of color from fear and darkness toward resurrection. We call it Celebrating African American Music and Art, forged in the rupture of crucifixion and death. Our concert today is free, but if you're inspired to pay it forward, your donations will go to the New Hampshire Black Heritage Trail. We believe it is an important educational resource, reminding us of the circumstances and the accomplishments of African Americans. We'll have buckets in the lobby after the concert, and First Church Council has voted to match your offerings today up to $300. One last comment. Please consider this an invitation to join us in our process toward racial justice, either as an individual or another faith community. We would welcome you with open arms. Would members of the First Church Racial Justice Steering Team that are here today please stand? So you can speak of any of them after the concert today. Thank you for your attention, and now I'll turn the microphone over to Reverend Rebecca Maccini.
First, you will hear today Wade in Water. It's a Jubilee song, and Jubilee songs are those created by and first sung by African people enslaved in the United States. W.E.B. Du Bois referred to these songs as sorrow songs and said the genre of songs was the singular spiritual heritage of the nation. Wade in the Water was made widely known when it was published in 1901 in a songbook comprised of the repertoire of the Fisk Jubilee Singers, which was an internationally known group that was formed to make money for Fisk University, which was the first university in the United States to offer a liberal arts education to young men and women, irrespectively of color, and it was founded in 1866. Did Harriet Tubman use this song, Wade in the Water, to warn escaping slaves of dogs coming so they should go into nearby water to put off the scent? We don't know for sure, but certainly this song was used for teaching, encouragement, and it's a song of salvation. as a work song. First released as a record in the 1920s by the Fifth Jubilee Singers, Down by the Riverside with the lyrics, "Ain't Gonna Study War No More," was also an anti-war song in the 1960s, sung by those protesters who were protesting the United States war in Vietnam. I Want Jesus to Walk With Me was made known by the Fifth Jubilee Singers, and there's a legend about this song. On one of the first tours of the group, they were pursued by a mob that wanted to harm them, and the singing of I Want Jesus to Walk With Me saved their lives. Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho was another Jubilee song. It has been used to teach children the story of a battle in the biblical book of Joshua. It is believed that the lyrics and the walls come a-tumbling down allude to the escape from slavery. Paul Robeson, Mahalia Jackson, and Elvis Presley recorded it. Today, this tune is popular in dance competitions, and the dancers love the tempo and the rhythm, even though they have no idea of its genre or historical meaning. Deep River is another song made known by the Fisk Jubilee Singers. The term Jordan or Jordan River was common in Jubilee songs. This is what Howard Thurman, theologian and civil rights activist, said about the song. It is certainly the most intellectual of all the spirituals, perhaps the most universal in insight. In a bold stroke, it thinks of life in terms of a river. For the early singers, slaves as they were, the river may have been the last and most formidable barrier to freedom. To slip over the river from one of the border states would mean a chance for freedom. To cross the river into Canada would mean freedom in a new country. But let us reflect on the deeper meaning here. To think of life as being like a river. Jubilee song that could have been written as a code song used by Harriet Tubman, who was known as Moses, for fugitive enslaved people in Maryland. But there is more evidence that it was sung by the contraband of war, the men who escaped enslavement and lived in camps established by the Union Army. It is said that on the evening of the Emancipation Proclamation, January 1st, 1863, that it was sung over and over at a contraband camp in Washington, D.C. When the Fisk Jubilee singers first sang it, there were 25 verses. Though there are fewer verses now, it remains relevant since modern-day pharaohs, people, principles, policies, and systems that oppress exist still.
to your left and your right. And I'm going to invite Inez McDermott, member of our First Church Racial Justice Steering Committee and professor of art history, now retired, to share with us some of the beautiful art she has chosen.
Except for
No, Tim Wildman is going to speak to you first.
I'm just a complete troublemaker. I just wanted to quickly introduce all these wonderful musicians who have donated their time and considerable talents to this project this year and today. I want to start with the person without whom this wouldn't be happening. He's probably not even, oh, there he is. He's hiding in the front row. The Reverend Dr. Bob Maccini has created all the jazz arrangements that you are hearing today. He is also playing trumpet, obviously, and directing the band. This ensemble, Bob started when he and Rebecca were in the church in Henniker many years ago as the Prodigals Jazz Ensemble. I have no idea why I chose that particular term, but most of you who know us can imagine. But this is such amazing work. Thank you, Bob, so much. Our lead alto today is also the lead alto in the Tall Granite Big Band and the New Hampshire Jazz Orchestra. He plays in Emily's Garage Band. He plays all over the place. In my humble opinion, he is the best saxophone player in New Hampshire, and he just keeps making us be amazed by the beautiful music that he plays, the wonderful human he is, and his generosity for being here today. Thank you, Greg Mostovoy. Joey Placenti is an amazing sax player. You won't hear him today, but he's also a great vocalist and entertainer. Joey grew up in California where he played. He played in Las Vegas, he played in Virginia, he played in the Navy all over the place. He was in the Navy band, and we are just so lucky to have Joey as a member of the Jazz Sanctuary team. He also is the musical director of the Tall Granite Big Band, and we couldn't be more pleased to have him here and contributing today. Joey Placenti. Iron Mike Fugere, as we like to call him in the big band, is the second alto in the big band. He's also the band manager. He will accept all prayers because herding 18-plus cats is something, it's a thankless job, I'll just leave it at that. But he does an amazing job, and he plays all the saxophones, including, of course, the bari sax, which he's playing, the baritone sax, which he's playing for us today. Iron Mike Fugere. Thank you, Mike. Chuck Booth, formerly of Manchester, now he lives in Pennacook, is an old musical friend. When our good friend Eddie Raczka went to Kuwait with the National Guard many years ago, he said, I have just a guy that can do all your gigs. We met Chuck at the time, and we've been fast friends and musical friends ever since. Chuck, just a couple of months ago, turned 80, and he's playing the best drums and percussion in his life. Chuck Booth. Our dear, dear friend Eddie Raczka has been through quite a journey these past 2 years with his health, and he's continued to be a musical and spiritual presence in our midst this whole time. He's not only a first call drummer, I call him the spiritual drummer, because anything you start to do when you're soloing, Eddie picks up on and makes you feel not alone, which in my case is really important. So please welcome back to full health and with us today, Eddie Raczka. None of this, the Jazz Sanctuary ministry here at First Church, or our ministry in general at First Church would happen without our technology integrator, Jock Irvine. He's also our bass player. He is a musician that I have relied on as a close personal friend since I started to try and play jazz piano about 20 years ago. kindly, he would come over to my house on Saturday mornings and play the bass while I struggled to play the piano, as he said, in time, in time, in time. I'm still working on it. None of this would happen today without Jock Irvine. Renee Rouse is not only an amazing singer, you've just heard that, she's also an incredible presence in our midst as a minister and as a witness for social justice and racial justice in particular. Her work on our New Hampshire Conference mission group is amazing, and she can preach it. We'll say that. And if you've not had her ever had the opportunity to hear her preach it, go to Northwood Congregational Church on any Sunday morning, and she will preach it just to you. So we are so thankful that Renee is with us today. Renee Rouse. I like to call Emilia Halstead my partner in crime. She arrived 10 years ago this month, and the search committee told me they had called someone who was a jazz singer, and my jaw fell open, and then when I heard her sing, my jaw fell further open. She is, as I like to say, the best jazz singer I've ever worked with, and she is an amazingly creative and spirit-filled presence that has made things happen in our congregation and in our musical community and in the community in general that I never could have believed would happen. The Reverend Emilia Halstead. I'm Tim Wildman, and I'm hanging out on keys today trying not to make too many mistakes. So thank you for coming. Inez McDermott is recently retired as the art historian at New England College. She's been in our racial justice first study group and now steering committee since the beginning. And she's just such an amazing presence and voice. And her being with us on this journey of racial justice at First Church and her curating of the art has been amazing. So we asked her to give a brief talk today on the art that we've been witnessing during this process, African American art. Inez McDermott.
Hi. I'm just going to talk about 13 images. I will be as brief as I can possibly be, because I could talk forever about this material. I chose works today that make reference to a lot of the themes that Rebecca's been talking about, the songs have been referring to. So most of these works come from the time of antebellum times, as well as throughout the Harlem Renaissance. Today, if you go and look at contemporary art, you will find that Black artists, artists of color, queer artists are very much in the forefront of contemporary art and being celebrated. But that wasn't always the case. And in fact, when I started studying art history, Black artists and women artists were in tiny little boxes in my art history books. And so this is really a celebration of moving out of those boxes and understanding that this is our history. This history is part of who we are. So I'll briefly go through some of these artists. I chose this first image because it was really, I think, George Floyd's murder and the Black Lives Matter movement that brought our racial justice, anti-racism group together. And from all of these protests came a lot of street art. And this one in particular was commissioned by the Minnesota African American Heritage Museum and Gallery. And each one of those letters was done by an individual artist that the museum commissioned to do this. And so while this is street art, it was also something that was very deliberately chosen and curated, and those artists were paid, which is wonderful, by the Minnesota African American Museum. Could I have the next slide, please? Deborah's helping me with the... Okay, terrific. All right, I'm going in chronological order, roughly. This first work is by a ceramic artist named David Drake. David Drake was born and died an enslaved man on a plantation in Edgewood, South Carolina, which was known for its enormous pottery works. He worked on his master's plantation, and his pots are very unusual for their enormous size, and even more unusual because he has inscribed words on them, oftentimes little couplets. And this one says, "I wonder where all my relation, friend to all and every nation." This is remarkable. David Drake was not supposed to be able to read and write. It was illegal to teach a person of color how to read and how to write. This is so transgressive that he would write on his pots that are going out to the public. He was allowed to do that, and we don't really know why. On the back of the pot is the date and L.M., Lewis Miles. Lewis Miles was his enslaver. So Lewis Miles must have allowed him to do this. It's an interesting question as to why David was given this, we don't want to call it a privilege, but was allowed to write. But the other thing that really has always struck me about this is, what does this pot say? It says that David's family and friends are gone. He doesn't know where they are. It tells you something about him and the way that his life has been lived in a place where he has no agency, no control, no sense of where his family is. It's an enormously emotional statement that he's making in the face of, under the nose of people who do not see him as a human being. Can I have the next slide, please? I'll show some happier things. This next work is a landscape by Robert Selden Duncanson. Duncanson was born a free man in Ohio, and his talents were recognized at a very early age and encouraged and supported by abolitionists. Much of his works are landscape paintings, which was the popular American style at the time. But in some ways, they're like David Drake's because they are a little bit transgressive. There are hidden meanings in Duncanson's work as well. This is the Garden of Eden. It was done in 1852, so it's done before the Civil War even starts. It imagines America in its perfection. So while it shows the Garden of Eden, it also makes reference to America. And Deborah's been great in showing us some little details as we've been listening to the music. There's a bird flying up there. It's probably an American eagle. And so it may make reference to America in its perfection, right, before the fall. And he may be referring to the fall, thinking of it as the condition of slavery in this country. A larger version of this painting was given to an abolitionist minister. And as Rebecca was giving some history of the music that we've been listening to, all of those hidden meanings that are in those hymns are also, I think, found in some of this artwork as well. I also want to say that these are some of the few 19th century African-American artists whose names we know. There are so many that we don't. Not so many fine art painters, but lots of people like David Drake who are making pots, who are making chests of drawers, who are making beautiful fabric. All of those people who were anonymous were likely people who were enslaved and working on plantations and had very fine, highly honed craft skills, but were never allowed to put their names to any of the wonderful work that they made. Can I have the next slide, please? Henry Asawa Tanner was the only African-American artist to work and enroll in the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, where he became one of the painter Thomas Eakins' favorite students. He became an internationally acclaimed artist after he moved to France because he felt he wasn't getting the fair treatment that he was accorded in Europe. Throughout his life, he was very much involved in racial justice issues. This painting, The Thankful Poor, from 1894, was the last painting he did before he turned all of his attention to painting religious scenes. He felt that he needed to devote himself more fully to his faith. One of the things he did throughout his career was he was the first African-American artist to paint Black people as working and living in genre scenes that defied stereotypes. So this painting is a good example of that, which shows a very simple meal with a father and a son, or a grandfather and a grandson, saying grace. And it's also, I think, a good transitional painting for him too, because it was this one, I think, that the last one where he decided he would do narrative spiritual scenes. Could I have the next one, please? This is one of my favorites, and if you go to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, sometimes they have it on view. This is Harriet Powers, who was born into slavery, and after emancipation, she and her husband struggled to keep their family fed and housed. We think she may have taken in sewing in those years to keep them, to support them. She only sold 2 quilts in her life, so we haven't found any other quilts that she's made. But what she does is she combines biblical scenes and historical scenes and sort of personal narratives from her life in these different squares. And of course, to her, the biblical scenes are the same as history scenes. To her, it's all the same. What's interesting about her as well is she uses African American quilting techniques that have their roots in Western African practices. Some of the images here, we can look at West African, Benin embroidery work and tapestries and quilts and see the same kind of imageries and the same kind of stitchery. So that memory, that tradition was passed down to her from her ancestors. Both quilts that we know were made and passed on were gifted to religious leaders. So she's really important in terms of looking at the craft traditions that stem from the long history that emerged in Africa and are carried through into the late 19th century. Could I have the next one, please? This is Aaron Douglas. Now we're moving into the Harlem Renaissance. This painting appeared in James Weldon Johnson God's Trombones, which was a book of poetry that tried to emulate Black preaching style. And the trombones referred to preachers in the Black church. Johnson and Douglas were part of the Harlem Renaissance, which was a flowering of the arts that celebrated and examined African American cultural expressions. And here, what we're looking at might be Christ carrying the cross, but it's also thought that this is a representation of Simon of Cyrene, who was the man who carried the cross part of the way during the crucifixion. The Black church, many in the Black church thought that Simon was a Black man from Africa. And oftentimes would preach and sing about Simon as being like them. He was the one who helped carry the burden for Christ. And it seems to me, because of the other figure there with what looks like a halo, it seems to me that I think that's a correct interpretation, that this is Simon who's carrying that cross and is the larger figure. Can I have the next one, please? This is also by Aaron Douglas. This is on the cover of the program today. This was a WPA mural that was made for the Harlem branch of the New York Public Library. The Depression proved advantageous to some Black artists because of the federal support for artists. And Douglas created this 5-panel mural for the branch. It depicted the history of the struggles and triumphs of Black people in America. And he always depicted, though, the ever-present threats to Black people in each of his paintings. He's also very much influenced by music, especially jazz. And if you look at these kind of concentric circles that are sort of lighter and darker, he saw that as an expression of musical sounds and rhythms. And most of his work makes reference to the jazz music that was so important to the Harlem Renaissance. Could I have the next one, please? Many of you may know the hymn, Lift Every Voice and Sing. It was also written by James Weldon Johnson, who had written God's Trombones. Augusta Savage, the only female artist I'm showing you today, was commissioned to create a work of art that celebrated or highlighted the impact that Black people had on music, and she chose James Weldon Johnson's hymn as her inspiration. It was done in 1939 for the World's Fair, and in this she portrays, obviously, I don't know if you can tell that that's a hand that's holding people singing. It was renamed the harp. She wanted to name it Lift Every Voice and Sing, and the committee at the World's Fair renamed it the harp. And you may also know that Lift Every Voice and Sing is also known as the Negro National Anthem or the Black National Anthem, and it's still sung today. Augusta Savage really struggled to achieve her dream of becoming an artist, and while she had great critical success, she never really had much financial success. But her legacy lived on. She was a teacher of many of the artists who emerged from the Harlem Renaissance. This sculpture, unfortunately, was destroyed soon after the World's Fair was concluded. Could I have the next one, please? Oh, I missed one. Okay. This is William H. Johnson, who grew up in poverty in the South and joined those moving north at the age of 17. He was part of what we call the Great Migration, which Aaron Douglas had sort of been a part of. He was kind of been recruited to come to Harlem. Johnson, from a young age, was determined to study art. He saved his money, studied at the National Academy of Design, then went to Europe to continue his studies. This work, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, is very typical of the work that Johnson had done, where towards the end of his career, he devoted himself to painting his people and painting religious themes. He lived most of his life in Europe, but came back at the beginning of World War II, again, just said he wanted to paint his own people. And when you look at this, we call this, it's a very sort of naive, very folk style. He was perfectly capable of painting in the Western European traditions, but he chose to paint in this way. He felt it connected more with the people in the rural South Carolina where he grew up, and also spoke more honestly and openly to his subject matter. It's really unusual for artists, 20th century artists, to tackle religious subject matter, but Johnson felt that it was an important message that he wanted to send about his people's history and culture. And this relates to Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, so it's a direct reference to a hymn. Could I have the next one, please? Okay, here's the other Johnson, the Lamentation, which is appropriate, I think, for today. And you can see that style really emanating from his work, I think, very much identifiable. Could I have the next one, please? Okay, good. So this is Jacob Lawrence. Jacob Lawrence was also part of the Great Migration, moved to Harlem as a teenager, studied with Augusta Savage, and Jacob Lawrence was very much interested in the history of African-American migration, of the Great Migration. He did a number of series of paintings that told the story of his people from Reconstruction through Jim Crow era through the movement of Black people from the South to the North. He also would oftentimes do series and tell stories of famous Black revolutionaries, he didn't call them civil rights heroes, but very much interested in telling the story of his people. In this painting, he is relating the way that the Black church had such an important role in people moving to Harlem. And the title, there are many churches in Harlem, the people are very religious. It's very narrative. He wants to emphasize how important and what the people were like who were coming here, coming to New York to settle. Okay, sorry about that. Could I have the next one, please? All right, this one, David Driscoll. David Driscoll's probably best known as an art historian and curator of African American art. Without him, many of the artists who were working in the 19th and early 20th century may not be known today. He insisted on collecting those works, getting them placed in museums, supporting those artists. But he was also an artist himself. When he was in his early 20s, he was deeply affected by the brutal murder of Emmett Till. I think most of you probably know that Emmett Till was a young teenage boy who was murdered, lynched in the South for allegedly whistling or speaking inappropriately to a woman in Money, Mississippi. Driscoll painted this work in response to Emmett Till's death and subsequent funeral. Some of you might recall that Emmett Till's mother refused a closed casket for him. She insisted the world see what had been done to him. And I think the title here, Behold Thy Son, right? Behold, here he is, Behold Thy Son, reflects Mamie Till's determination to make us confront what we have done, right? That he's our son, we're responsible for all of this. And if you look, I know it's hard to look closely, but when you look at that brutalized body, it's not the traditional body of the crucified Christ. It's the body of someone who's been beaten. So it's a direct reference to the murder of Emmett Till. And the last image, please. Okay. Romeo Bearden, He is Risen, the Passion of Christ series from 1945. This is a bit out of our chronology, but I think it's a good image to close with since tomorrow is Easter. Romeo Bearden was also a child of the Great Migration and spent much of his youth surrounded by the creative minds of the Harlem Renaissance. He was really fascinated with modernist and European art and became successful fairly early in his life as an artist. He served in World War II, and when he came back, he was inspired by the stained glass windows that he had seen throughout Europe, but also wanted to embark on a series of religious paintings. Remember, again, it's really unusual for a modern artist to tackle religious subjects, but it seems that this is a path that many Black artists who grew up or came of age during the Harlem Renaissance were really inspired by. Like Jacob Lawrence, Bearden's work was purchased by the Museum of Modern Art. Those two artists became among the first Black artists that the museum work that the museum had ever purchased. So I think that's a good image to end with. And if you have any questions afterwards, I'll be around. But thank you for bearing with me. And I have lots of other artists to share at some point if anyone wants to talk to me some more.
While we're re-herding the cats, I want to add my voice of thanks to all of you. Just a wonderful afternoon. There's going to be a period, I believe, when we're done for people to stay and meditate. Yes. Yep. And I'd also like to let you know, if you want to continue your Holy Week worship and you have nothing for tonight, there's worship at St. Paul's Episcopal tonight, Holy Saturday at 7:30 next to the State House. So come on up, continue your Holy Week worship.
The origins of of the next song, This Train Is Bound for Glory, are unknown. It was first recorded in the 1920s and then made popular by Sister Rosetta Tharpe, who is known as the godmother of rock and roll and who influenced many early popular rock musicians. Last year, a wonderful children's picture book was published that has the same title, This Train Is Bound for Glory. It is by Alice Faye Duncan. And the description of the book, This Train Is Bound for Glory, says this. It illustrates one of the most iconic spirituals, and it is a celebration of God's call to every heart to come home. Soon and Very Soon was written in 1978 by Andre Crouch, who was a Grammy Award winner, Oscar nominee, pastor, and man credited with bringing about the whole genre of contemporary Christian music. The lyrics of Soon and Very Soon are based upon scripture from the end of the book of Revelation, the last book of the Bible, where it says, God will be with the people, will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, The old order of things has passed away. The great Duke Ellington wrote the next song, Come Sunday. He wrote it as an instrumental movement of a larger composition entitled Black, Brown, and Beige, which was written to illustrate the Black experience in history. And it was performed in Carnegie Hall in 1943. By 1958, Come Sunday had lyrics, and Mahalia Jackson made it known and loved. The lyrics to Ellington's Come Sunday are analogous to the words in a widely circulated sermon by a Black preacher that was circulated in the latter part of the 20th century. The only words of the sermon are, "It's Friday, but Sunday's coming." And they're said over and over again, varying in tempo and emotion and color and volume. The lyrics, some of the lyrics to Ellington's work is, "Lord, dear Lord above, God Almighty, God of love, please look down and see my people through." tune is the same as the tune of a Roman Catholic hymn from the 1700s called O Sanctissima. Black regiments in the Civil War sang a song with the words, "No more auction block for me." And Bob Dylan sang these words in the 1960s as a verse of We Shall Overcome. A Black Methodist preacher, Reverend Dr. Charles Tinsley, in the early 1900s, wrote a song, "All Overcome Someday." And the refrain was, "If in my heart I do not yield, all overcome someday," though we would never recognize the tune that he used with those lyrics. In 1945, the tune and the lyrics that we would be more familiar with came into being in a song, "Wool Overcome," sung by Black women who were striking for higher wages against American tobacco. The song evolved some more, and when Martin Luther King Jr. first heard We Shall Overcome in 1957, he said, "There's something about that song that haunts you." Protesters sang it as they marched and were hauled off to jail for breaking laws that enforced segregation. So powerful was it that it spread and has been a song that's been sung in freedom movements around the world: China, Eastern Europe, Lebanon, and India. During COVID, 19 musicians from around the world sang it over the internet as a song and a message of solidarity.
that space for vigil, for those for whom still live in the space of crucifixion and death. However, we also invite you to journey directly out those doors to join us in conversation and coffee. There are 2 bright green buckets to place your goodwill offering in if you so choose, and we'll see you out there for conversation.
So you have words in your program to hush. I'm going to teach you if you do not know hush. So, and there are no instruments other than your voice and drums. So, how many of you out there know hush? Oh, so good, so good. Because we carpet, you won't be able to do this. So we'll do it for you. And the drum have it for you too. Hush. Hush. Somebody's calling my name. Hush. Hush. Somebody's calling my name. Hush. Hush. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Sing it with me. Hush. 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 Somebody's calling my name. Hush. Hush. Somebody's calling my name. Hush. Hush. Somebody's calling my name. Hush. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Sounds just like Jesus. Somebody's calling my name. 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 Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? I'm so glad trouble won't last always.